structure, the original Globe Theatre was built in 1599 by carpenter Peter Smith and his workers. The Globe Theatre was roundly shaped, containing 20 sides that were 3 stories high. The Globe did not have a roof. The stage roof was actually a canopy held up by pillars. It represented the sky. The stage projected into the body of the theatre so that the audience was surrounded by the stage. The stage had a secret bottom for the purpose of dramatic ghost scenes and effects. To the picture on the right, you will see what the Globe looked like back then. Before the Globe, before any theatre was built, most of the time people would perform plays in courtyards, inns, and sometimes the nobleman's home. The theatre owned by James Burbage was a well-known theatre, but was actually called the Playhouse before the Globe came along. No images have been constructed of what was before the Globe, but it looked very similar to what it looks like today. To the picture on the right is James Burbage. Operation. Poor commoners paid 1 penny to be seated in the pit. To be in the galleries, nobilities paid £5 to be seated in there. The theatre only operated during the daytime because it did not have electricity. Also, the theatre only operated during the summer because the stage and the pit were exposed to the elements. On the right is British pounds. Opposition to theatre. The Puritans were the main people who were against the Globe Theatre. The Puritans were very religious Catholics. They didn't approve because it was a new idea, and the theatre attracted immoral people such as thieves, gamblers, pickpocketers, beggars, and prostitutes. Also, the Globe attracted young people who had to skip work to attend because of the daytime hours, and that caused many issues for the Globe. The Puritans finally got the Globe shut down in 1644. Audience. The Globe Theatre could hold 1,500 people. Queen Elizabeth often watched plays at the Globe. Upper-class nobles would pay to sit in the Lord's Room. Lower-class commoners, groundlings they would be called, would have stood in the pit. Rich men and women who attended plays would wear masks to be in disguise. Crowds were very rowdy, and they had no problem yelling out and talking throughout the whole play. To the picture on the right, you will see how the rich noble woman and the rich noble man would have dressed to be at the play. Actors. All actors were males. They forbid women from the stage, therefore men typically had to play women's roles. Actors were expected to act out realistic fight scenes without injuring themselves or their friends. At the time, the acting company was small, so they only had 12 to 15 actors at a time, so they had to take on a few roles. To the pictures on the right are some of the people who would have acted in the plays at the Globe. Costumes and props. For the most part, they didn't use big, extravagant props in the early times in their productions, but they would have used small, movable objects such as swords, daggers, bones, candles, torches, writing materials, armor, blankets, and skulls. As time passed, they started to introduce larger items for visual appeal such as beds, thrones, caskets, benches, caves, and barrels. Costumes and props. Women's costumes. Men and women both did not dress for comfort. They dressed for visual appeal. Men who dressed as women would have worn a stomacher, bodice, and skirt. The stomacher was a triangular piece that held the bodice together with ties, and then the skirt was attached as well. They wore flashy jewelry, lace, and flowers to top off their outfits. On the pictures on the right, you will see a stomacher, which is the triangular piece, and the bodice on the top. Costumes and props. Men's costumes. Rich patrons donated the men's costumes. Men who played men roles most of the time wore costumes that the everyday rich patron and the everyday poor commoner wore, such as colorful tights, hats, cloaks, and sleeves that could detach. On the picture on the right is what men wore back then. Special effects. They used sheep's blood for gory death scenes. They put the blood in bags and put them under the actors' costumes so that when they were stabbed it busted and looked like real blood. They also used cannons, live animals, ropes, ladders, music, and fireworks. To the picture on the right is a picture of someone who has been stabbed and the blood is pouring down their costume. Plays performed in the Globe. Macbeth was performed in 1606, Hamlet performed from 1600 to 1601, and Julius Caesar was the first known Shakespeare play to be performed at the Globe Theatre in 1599. To the picture on the right is a play being performed in the current Globe Theatre. The modern Globe. Open area in the style of an amphitheater. The theater is now approximately 200 yards away from the original Globe theaters. The new theater can house up to 1,600 people sitting and 700 standing. A museum, restaurant, and gift shops are just outside the theater. To the right are pictures of the new theater outside and in. Extra facts. When poor commoners would attend any play at the Globe, they would put their penny in a box, and that is where the term box office came from. Color coding was used to advertise the type of play that was being performed there. A black flag meant a tragedy, a white flag meant a comedy, and a red flag meant history. Many of the boy actors died of poisoning due to the vast quantities of lead in their makeup. The new Globe opened in 1997.